One of the tools that I use to get really profound change in people or couples or leaders is something called cognitive dissonance. And you're probably thinking, Greg, what is cognitive dissonance? Well, it's one of the very most effective tools you can have to elicit or influence change. And in the right hands, it can make remarkable change without you even knowing it in relatively a short time. So let me tell you what it is, how it works, and how it can influence your life. So, cognitive dissonance basically means that you've got an identity, a belief. Okay, let's use an example. Let's use a relationship where there's poor communication. And either one of the people or both couples think or believe or identify with that I am empathetic, I'm a great communicator, I hear and listen. Right? That's their identity, that's their belief. The reality of the situation is that their relationship is just toxic and their communication is all over the place and it's not working. Nobody's being heard and seen and listened to or validated or appreciated. That is cognitive dissonance, where there's tension between what they identify and what they believe and what is reality. And people in my position can use the cognitive dissonance to elicit and influence change to create better communication. So let's go through the steps, the playbook to be able to do this, right? So I will use that tension at the start. So I will actually use self-awareness, right? Which is self-awareness is a great tool, because what you have to understand, if I want anyone to change their behavior, I can't use judgment. I can't use blame. I can't project anything. I can't say, well, you're not doing this and you're not doing that. That shuts the whole thing down altogether. So I have to use self-awareness to bring to the surface the dissonance where they are in misalignment between their identity and what's actually happening. So what I will tend to do as step one is reinforce that that's what they believe that they're good at and why it's important to them. So I'll ask some questions about why it's important that you are a good listener. You know, what does it do for you? How does it make you feel? What does it do from a relationship perspective? And then I'll go, but it's not really working, is it? You can see that you guys, there's a miscommunication in between two people here. And this is where most people go off track. At that point in time is that first step is I'll get into this, you're not doing this and you're not doing this and you're not doing this, and try some tips and tricks about listening techniques, something like that. That's the wrong way. So my job is to bring up the negative in a self-awareness way that opens up a doorway to influence change. And through self-awareness, I can do that by going, I understand that you've got conflict in your relationship right now, but let me just tell your story. If you're, just say, example, let's say her name is Sally and his name is George, right? Sally, you're a lawyer. To become a lawyer, what did you do? I went to university, I learned this, I learned all this kind of stuff. And to do that, I passed the bar and I became a lawyer. And George is, let's say, he's a builder or a carpenter or something like that. So, mate, what did you do to actually become a carpenter as good as you are? Well, I went to trade school. I learned on the tools for a while. I worked in the building company. I learnt off the owner there. He showed me the ropes. He showed me how to run a business. He showed me how to do profit and loss and all the stock and all that kind of stuff. I said, interesting, isn't it? To become who you wanted to become in your careers, you went and studied the details of becoming the best in your business. Where have you learnt communication from, guys? And they'll come look at me and kind of go, well, nowhere, we've winged it. I said, there you go. There's the problem. I can actually see that communication is really important to you, but what's lacking is the fact that nobody's taught you what real communication is. And I am really just congratulate you two for being here and wanting to go down this path, but it's not your fault. School doesn't teach you about this. Society doesn't teach you about all this kind of stuff. We sort of just wing it, yet we'll go and do all the kind of doctorates and learnings and MBAs and all that kind of stuff about our jobs, yet we won't do about the most important thing in our lives, which is, human-to-human contact. So what I've basically there is I've given them an insight as to why there's a problem. I've not used blame or judgment. I've used another story and I've been able to anchor it in a way that they can understand it. And then I can just go, well, it's not your fault, but you have got an issue here. And that's an easy way to sort of just bring up through self-awareness that they do have an issue with communication. Because what people will do before that, as part of that step one, is if you bring it up the wrong way, they'll rationalize it or they'll minimalize it. So they'll rationalize it by, going, well, we're all stressed. Everyone's stressed. You've got a big, high-paying job. He runs his own business. We don't have time. It's the stress of everything that's basically causing this to happen. Or they will just go, every couple has conflict. Everybody has issues where they have conflict in relationships. So they'll try and use those kind of things. But in that space, through self-awareness, you can actually combat those kind of those comebacks from the couple as to why they wouldn't want to go to the path of having better communication. So you've got to combat the way they're actually trying to justify it as well too. So that first step is all about the self-awareness about why they are where they are, really anchoring their what's important to them, have them realize they've got bad communication, combat the excuses or the rationalization or minimization, and that way you open up a doorway that I can get in from that stage, right? So from that part, step two is then reinforcing what is the ideal situation. Step two is all about what is going to happen, what will improve in communication. So what would their life be like? What would their relationship be like? How would they feel? What would change? What would the holidays be like? How would their finances be? How would their kids be? What would their sex life be? If they had better communication, what they wanted, and they communicated in the right way, what would happen? So then in that place, I'm actually, again, using what they think they believe to be their identity about being a good communicator. If they're a good communicator and they change their habits, what's their life like? So I'm anchoring in future state. That if this happens in this way and you do this, then this is a solution or an outcome you're going to get to. So all of a sudden, I'm actually opened up the doorway. I've actually then anchored in a future state. I haven't done anything yet, no techniques. I'm just asking questions of them. And then that point, they're actually going, oh, this is it. I can see this. I can do that. And when you got that place where they're feeling in that space what they really want to do and who they want to be, in that space, they're actually releasing hormones, which is either dopamine or oxytocin, because they're building trust at that stage. So what's happening there is I'm not only using psychological techniques, I'm using hormones at level to actually build the bond and build the trust to people. So the first two steps are really about opening up the awareness. Step two is about anchoring the future state. But also then I'm deliberately pushing dopamine and oxytocin by what I'm saying to create bonds between people. And, at this stage, I've done no techniques. Literally, there's been no talking techniques at all. And we haven't gone through who's doing what or who's doing this and who's doing that, right? This is covert stuff. And they think they're coming here and they're just talking about certain things. I've already started by this stage. They're just not aware of it. And this is the great thing about cognitive dissonance, is that you're using something that's quite emotionally pushing against each other to create the outcome you want to create. So once we do step two about putting in the future state, and then why it's important to you, and then to sort of just help them understand about, okay, this is where you want to go to, because you're building on step one and step two, okay? I will then go into an education moment where I will say, so let's try something, guys. Let's try an active listening technique. And I'll give them some pointers about how to do that in the right way to be seen, heard, and felt. And I'll usually do, things like someone just actually sit there and talk about things without saying the word you, and how they want to feel, and be able to bring up something in a safe environment, and have people sort of just listen and play back what the other person's been saying, but also teach them about perception and reality and how the other person sees things and how they view things based on their history and all that kind of stuff. So I'll teach them an education part. So on top of step one and step two, step three is about education. It's about trying something and reinforcing the fact that they do actually have common ground. They do have good communication skills. They were just lacking in the training to do it. And it wasn't their fault. They didn't know how. So I'm not actually saying they weren't good at what they were doing. I'm saying that they really did have great intentions. What they lacked was the education to communicate effectively, which was causing the tension in the first place. And I've used the dissonance to be able to do that, to elicit or influence the change. And then what I'm doing is that I'm using the hormonal response to that stuff to embed their behavior. And they've got no idea that's happening at this stage, right? So by the time step 3 is done, they see an outcome by, wow, this is really cool. This is really easy to do. I was seen, heard, and felt. I've also learned something about, dark psychology, like human psychology. So they're feeling not only listened, heard, and felt and seen, they're feeling like, I know something very few people know. So there's this, they've got oxytocin, they've got serotonin, they've got dopamine running through their body, all reinforcing the change in behavior they want to do. And by that stage, because I've anchored that all in a roundabout way, because at the end of it, I'll go, see, you can do it. You are doing it. It wasn't your fault. You can easily do it. You just need the right opening to do this and the right teaching and to know the right way to do it. They're going, this is fantastic because it's quick, it's easy, and they're not sitting in this place of blame and judgment or like what happened 15 years ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So using a very effective tool to create really quick change in people in 3 basic steps. And then at the end of it, they're going, well, this is great. But the best part about it is we're also putting in what's called the IKEA effect. People love to be part of the solution and help co-create. So if I order a piece of furniture that comes to me and I just put it in my office here, there's not much of an emotional investment in it. But if I bring the IKEA thing in and I have to put it together, because I put time and effort into it, I value that piece of furniture a lot more because I've put time and effort into it. It's a psychological, not trick, but it's a known effect, right? So it's called the IKEA effect. So by helping them create something, not by just me telling them what to do, because if I'm telling people what to do, they don't make any change. I help people create in the moment. I help them feel like they're creating the experience themselves. And when they're doing that, they learn it so much better because I'm not only teaching them, I'm also helping them experience that. And what's happening is the brain is actually taking this in because, and you've heard about me say this before, but too many people try and teach people by the intellect or by intelligence, ramming it through the prefrontal cortex, and you can't do it that way. But human beings don't learn by intellect, don't learn by information, don't learn by trying to ram things through that prefrontal cortex. We don't learn that way. Human beings learn through the mammalian brain, through the limbic system, which is based on emotions, feelings, and hormones. That's the only way that we make change as human beings, right? Too many people out there these days are talking about information, intellect, systems, processes, and tools to try and elicit change and wonder why it doesn't work, because it never worked. It never will, because if they actually knew how people worked, they wouldn't be doing half the stuff they're doing, because none of it has worked or will ever work, because it's just more information. And how much information we got out there? We got so much out there, yet people are just still as broken as ever, because we're just ramming them home full of infographics and cheat sheets and videos to watch like this, right? So my job is to help you understand is that change only happens through a certain part of the brain. You can't get there via intellect. And by helping you understand that a way to do this is through cognitive dissonance, which is a way to bypass the intellect and bypass the cognitive part of your brain into the limbic system. Once I'm in there, I can influence change for you for good reasons and do it quite easily, because the way that actually happens is rather quick and fast when you emotionally connect to it, because we make decisions based on emotions and feelings and hormones. We justify it by logic. So the reason why I'm throwing in some logic in there as well too is that once they go through the process of actually feeling like this stuff's really working, then we justify it with the fact is, hey, you're a lawyer, you learn stuff through law, you go to university, right? To get to university, become a good lawyer, you must learn these things. That's the intellect part. That's the reinforcement of intellect. So I'm using all these different techniques. And the best thing about it is the client doesn't know. They just think I'm asking questions. And all of a sudden they've changed their behavior like that without them even knowing, without me even trying, and without them even actually having to try too hard either, because I've influenced the part of their brain that does actually want to change because they believe they're good communicators. I can see it. They've stated it. Just the evidence was, the other way around. The thing was missing was the education around what good communication is, right? But I've used the dissonance and the friction between those two realities to create the change that I needed in 3 steps. So guys, cognitive dissonance in the right hands is such a powerful tool. And used the right way, you can make dramatic change in your lives very, very easy and very, very simply without having to try very, very hard at all. And it's a powerful tool in the right hand. So I just want you to remember, intellect and intelligence and more knowledge does not make change in people. It never has, never will. The only way to make change in people is to access the part of the brain that drives human behavior, which is not the prefrontal cortex. It's the limbic system. It's the mammalian brain. It's where your emotions, your feelings, and your hormones reside. You can access that part. You can have a skilled person to help you drive whatever change you want to change in people. You can not only influence your life, you can influence your communication styles, you can influence your relationships, you can influence your friends and family, you can influence the way that you lead at work and the way that you operate at work, right? It's such a powerful tool to be able to have knowledge and wisdom about deep human psychology and dark psychology stuff about human behavior. It's such a cool thing to do. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe. If you want to know about not only cognitive dissonance, but about my program called Neuro Influence, which is part of my Human EQX program, is that we teach you about human psychology at this deep level. We teach you about how to have not only understand yourself at a deeper level, it's about your partner, it's about perspective, it's about reality, it's about, there's no free will in life. It's quite scary stuff. We teach you about how to get more money at work, how to influence your boss, how to influence your customers, right? For the good reasons, right? So if you want to be able to upskill your life in a way that very few people do and have access to this psychology model, which I call Neuro Influence, reach out. I'll put my contact details below. I don't work with a lot of clients at all. Very few actually a year, because this stuff is quite unique and it's bespoke for people. But if you want to do that, just reach out and I'm more than happy to have a chat to you. But again, subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the chat. If you got any feedback, please put in the comments and I look forward to chatting to you again. See you later.